Yo, what's up, guys? The 2025 summer transfer window is officially closed, and Milan have done some late business, guys. First, we'll talk about the departure and the acquisition, and then we'll talk a little bit about how I feel about this transfer window. But first things first, guys, Samuel Chukwueze is going to Fulham on loan with an option to buy for 25 to 26 million euros. Now, guys, where do I start off in regarding Samuel Chukwueze? Now, Samuel Chukwueze, Milan had bought him a few years ago for 28 million euros. And I hate to say it again, Samuel Chukwueze is another player, just like Noah Okafor and Yunus Musa, a player that did not take advantage of his opportunities when given, a player that showed too much inconsistency at his time in Milan. Very frustrating at times with this player. He has the quality to be a very effective player, but every time Chukwueze came on for Milan, he would not perform well sometimes. He would show inconsistencies like I just mentioned. Wouldn't get a lot of shots on target, would miss the net a lot. Would always get stopped by a defender because he had trouble beating his man when it came to defenders in Italy, of course. And that's the thing about Italy. Italy's a very defensive league, and Chukwueze seemed like he had some extreme difficulties adjusting from the La Liga to Serie A, and you could see it in this player. Now, I blame Stefano Pioli a little bit, and obviously Fonseca and Conceição. That's one big reason is that Milan have had a carousel of coaches the last few years, and Chukwueze hasn't been able to cement himself as a starter or have himself some important substitutions coming off the bench, of course. Now, that's one reason why Pioli benching him a lot of the times because he came in late was another reason why he couldn't get used to the league right away. But then any time he did have a chance to start, he would get subbed off after 60 minutes of play, not doing very much. He did have a couple goals. I remember he scored one time against Udinese. He scored a key goal against Newcastle in the Champions League for Milan to qualify to the next stage. This was obviously before the Champions League changed their format. So Chukwueze had some moments, but for 28 million euros, Chukwueze, Milan got ripped off by Villarreal, if you guys ask me. Now, the thing I'm upset about most is that this is a loan and Milan weren't able to offload Chukwueze permanently. Now, if he doesn't have a good year at Fulham, Milan will have to try to dump him again in next summer's transfer window, of course. So I hope to God that Chukwueze has a really strong season at Fulham and forcing the Premier League club to buy him so Milan can recuperate some assets, of course, from the 28 million they dropped on him for Villarreal, of course. So I hope Chukwueze does well at Fulham. I really hope that he ends up having a solid season, like I mentioned, so they can buy him and Milan gets money back. That would be fantastic to see, but just another player that I was disappointed by, a player I expected a lot more from, a player to help compete for a position on the right side with Pulisic, of course, but Pulisic obviously just hit the ground running with Milan and took that starting spot, no problem, of course. But Chukwueze never really tested Pulisic, and anytime Chukwueze would have a chance, to score anything, he would just make the wrong decisions. His decision-making was not very good on top of it. So I think this is the right move to offload Samuel Chukwueze. I just wish it was on a permanent move, and I wish him best of luck in England. It just did not work out for him here at AC Milan. Now, let's talk about the player Milan bought today, David Odogu from Wolfsburg. Now, I'm not going to sit here, guys, and pretend like I know this kid, okay? All I know is that he's 19 years old. He played 3 games in the Bundesliga last year, and he only played majority of his time on their under-19 team. So for Milan to drop 7 million euros plus 3 million in bonuses, and the kid's going to get a contract till 2029 with an option till 2030, this leaves me very surprised that Milan spent 10 million euros on a young player like this. He's not even going to be playing on the first team. He's going to be joining Milan Futuro. So that's another frustrating thing. Max Allegri wanted an experienced center back instead of a young talent. This kid here, he's got good potential. I'm hearing a lot of good things about his talent, how he could be very productive for Milan in the future. But Milan are trying to get back to Champions League and compete for the Scudetto. They needed an experienced center back now. And that is one of the more frustrating things about this transfer market that I'm about to get into. So I wish this kid nothing but the best of luck at Milan. I hope he pans out. I hope he does well in the Futuro. Hopefully he comes up to the first team and makes an impact. But that might not be for a few years. And Milan to spend this money on this kid when you had negotiations for Joe Gomez, who obviously ends up staying at Liverpool because the Marghi deal ended up collapsing last minute because Crystal Palace, his manager Glasnow said if he leaves, he's gonna quit. So Palace end up keeping the player, so which ends up obviously being a domino effect for them keeping Gomez, of course, Liverpool. And then obviously Milan decided to revert to signing a young center back, which is okay. But you needed to get another center back with the way this defense looks. I hope the kid does well. Wish him best of luck now that he's at Milan. But I feel it's a bit of an unsatisfying move for me as a Milan fan, and something that a lot of fans are not very happy about, that he was the defender that was purchased on the last day of the market. But let's see how this kid does in the futuro, and I hope he does well for this club. Now, let's talk about Milan's transfer window. Now, I think Milan had an okay transfer window, decent transfer window, but not a fantastic transfer window. Now, the thing that I think Milan did best was revamping the midfield. Of course, you bring in guys like Modric, of course, on a free. Ricci for 23 million. You spent 40 million almost on Jashari, who's obviously out for 3 months, of course. That was the best thing Milan have done in their transfer market. You completely revamped your midfield. You get some depth now on top of it. You add Rabiot as well with Fofana and Cheek. Milan's midfield's got some great depth now. So I think they did a solid job in that department. Now, in the attack, I think we did an okay job. You know, you spent almost 40 million euros on Christopher Nkunku. Of course, a very surprising deal. Obviously, you got Leao. Santi Jimenez is staying after the talk all day about him going to Roma for a swap with Boldic. That deal obviously did not happen, so Jimenez is going to be staying at Milan. You obviously have the likes of Pulisic and Alexis Salamakers as well. But those guys there that I just mentioned are your only attackers. So if one of these guys gets hurt, Milan are very thin in attacking options, okay? So you got Nkunku, Leao, Jimenez, Salamakers, and Pulisic. So you got 5 guys there. The question is now, does Allegri play a 2-striker form? Does he go to a 4-3-3? Does he go 3-4-2-1? We'll have to wait and see. But if somebody gets hurt, or two guys get hurt at once, Milan's going to be really thin in attacking options. That's why I wouldn't have minded if they kept Camarda. I understand why they sent him on loan to get game time to improve as a player. Understandable. But, you know, if, like I mentioned just now, if somebody gets hurt, it's going to be a little bit risky and a little bit shaky to see what happens at the attacking position. But they can always figure that out in January. But for me, I think Milan could have added another guy. It would have been nice just for comfortability and security, of course, just in case if somebody gets hurt. But they chose not to. There wasn't anybody out there available other than Boldic, and they wouldn't have gotten another striker unless you offload Santi Jimenez. So that's why Milan decided to stay as they were. I think Milan's got great attacking options, but it's a risk signing a guy like Nkunku for the amount of money they did. Hope to God he stays healthy, because if he does, it's a steal. But if he doesn't, extremely worrying sign. But I don't think it was a horrendous deal getting Nkunku, and I don't think their attack will suffer that badly because we're playing once a week. Now, the biggest department that I am extremely pissed off about and extremely unsatisfied about is Milan's defense. Now, the biggest problem that Milan had last year was obviously conceding goals in their midfield, of course, but defending was the biggest issue with this club. Now, you go and sign Coney De Winter after you sell Malik Chow for 40 million euros. Sure, you save some money by signing De Winter for 23 million euros, and then you spend another 10 on this kid that I just mentioned from Wolfsburg. Now, the thing that frustrates me more than anything is that you spend 10 million on Afekami, 17 million on Estupian, right? You get Pietro Celentano as your backup goalkeeper. But Milan really frustrated me more than anything is because you spent 40 million on an attacker, you spent 40 million on a midfielder in Jashari. Why in God's name did this club not spend 40 million plus on a world-class center back or an experienced center back? Now, they could have got Emmanuel Akanji from Manchester City. That prick ended up going to bloody Inter, of course, because they offer him Champions League football. And I blame Giorgio Furlani again, because once again, you offer Akanji 4 million euros. He ain't going to come for that, especially without Champions League football. All right? He's the big reason why Tadic couldn't get some players that Allegri wanted, because Furlani's cheap and he always gets in the way because he's a little rat and has an ego and has to be involved in every decision when it comes to the sporting aspect of the club, of course. Milan absolutely needed to spend money on a top-class center back. Absolutely a guarantee. Minimum 30 million euros after the money you got on Malik Chow. The fact that you sold Chow and did not get yourself a top-class center back, Milan's defense is shaky as hell going into this season. We got to rely now on Tomori and Pavlovic, who do not have very good seasons. I like Gabbia. He's the only guy that I have a little bit of security with and a comfortability with him playing at the back. But you got a guy like Estupiñán, first year in Serie A, had a couple shaky starts his first 2 games at Milan. Atacami's new to the league. You got Bartasagi, who's still very young. Salamakers might have to play at right back now because we let Jimenez go to Bournemouth. So I think Milan did a horrendous job dealing with the defensive side for Milan. They did not do their job when it came to surefire to making it a surefire guarantee that Milan has some structure in the back, a leader in the back, and they did not do any of that. I would have been even okay if Milan went and got Thiago Silva for a year. I would have been fine with that. He's a leader. He's a guy who you will fight with in the defense. But clearly Milan's not going to go for a guy like Thiago Silva who's almost 40 bloody years old, which I understand, of course. But this team here left a lot of fans very frustrated how they did not define the defense. And I totally agree with that. I am very unsatisfied that this club here did not drop big money on a center back. Should have been big money on a forward, big money on a midfielder, like I said, and big money on a center back. Minimum 120 million should have went to those 3 positions. You spend 80 on the midfield and attack, but you cheap out on the defense. The most important aspect of Calcio is the defense, other than the midfield, of course. But insane to me that this management is okay with going with the defense that they're going with. If they're going to play 3 at the back, only 4 center backs, that's not good enough, okay? It is not good enough. Milan should have offered Akanji more money because they're not in Europe. Now you watch him go to a direct rival. He's replacing Benjamin Pavard, who's going to Marseille, of course. So I am very upset with how this transfer market ended for Milan, guys. I thought it started off okay. It got better as it went on, but it leaves us with a bitter taste in our mouth that this management did not do what it took to spend the proper money. And I'm sure Allegri's pissed off as well because this club here did not meet his demands fully. They didn't go get Vlahovic. You didn't go get Granit Xhaka. You didn't go get Leone. There are so many reasons that I would understand if Allegri left after 1 year. I don't think he's going to, but I'm just saying. Managers got to be frustrated when you demand certain things and the club decides to go in a different direction, especially the cheaper direction. That is the most frustrating thing. Look what De Laurentiis did for Conte. Conte made demands, and De Laurentiis has met the demands. Milan has not done that for Allegri. Now Allegri has to work his magic and try to get this team to top 4 with that defense. The attack and midfield are fine. I think we got a lot of talent up there. It's the defense that worries me. If we can see goals like we did against Cremonese, very worrying sign, guys. If you had to ask me what I would rate this market, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. If Milan had bought in Leone and maybe a more suitable right back instead of Atacami, it would have been an 8 or a 9 out of 10. But because they didn't do that, this is a 6 out of 10 market for me. I leave a little bit unsatisfied. Do I still think Milan can make top 4? Absolutely. But is it frustrating to see that they did not cover the defensive department like they should have? Absolutely. But guys, tell me your thoughts and opinions about the transfer market, about Chukwueze going, about the new signing at center back. Leave your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for watching. As always, click like if you like this video. Subscribe if you guys want to see more content. Forza Milan sempre as always, guys. Remember, if you do not watch sports, you're more. Ciao, guys.